he moves the camera, adjusts the lights, gets back. The whole thing takes 11 seconds, right? He just gets it done. And then our guy looks through the camera and he's like, yeah, this is much better. This is much better. He just nails it. And then we just nailed everything on basically like one take.
Hey guys, this is Bek Abdullayev from Super Dispatch, host of Auto Transport Copilot. I'm super excited today to bring Matt D'Andrea to you today. He's an incredible personality in the automotive space. Has a lot of experience and has done a ton of exciting projects that I'm excited to tell you about. So let me do a quick intro of Matt. I have this little paragraph I'm going to read now. Our guest today is Matt D'Andrea, an automotive enthusiast and co-host of hugely popular and successful CarCast podcast, alongside Adam Carolla, who you may have heard about, and Bill Goldberg. With nearly 3 decades of experience in building, modifying, and repairing cars, Matt has become a prominent voice in the automotive media space. In addition to his work on CarCast, Matt has produced and hosted various automotive shows, including Car Collectors for GQ magazine, and served as an executive producer for the critically acclaimed documentary, Winning: The Racing Life of Paul Newman. His deep passion for cars, combined with his extensive media experience, has made him a go-to figure for automotive enthusiasts. Today, he continues to share his experience and stories through his podcasts and projects, giving audiences a behind-the-scenes look at the world of cars and racing. In addition to all of his remarkable accomplishments, Matt is also a founder of a hard seltzer company called Bravago, which we're going to get into briefly. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks so much. That was a great intro. I don't know where you got all that from, but that's nice. I should send that out on my resume. I appreciate it.
I'll send it to you. Yeah, you can use it as it's a pretty good bio. Yeah, it's good. All right, so you've been in the space for a long time, bro. So how did you get started? Like 30 years in the automotive, clearly a passion for this. So how did you end up getting into this?
Yeah, I think like a lot of car guys, you kind of start as an early age. You're either into cars when you're younger, usually, a parent or a relative or, a sibling or something like that kind of gets you into it, and you kind of find your way if that's what you want to do, either just as an enthusiast or as a career. So I was an automotive fan for as long as I can remember, just kind of tooling on cars when I was a kid, in the parents' garage. And then, after high school, I started a tech company, an early web development company. And being an automotive fan, I want to target some automotive companies. So I started on the advertising side of things, and worked with Honda and Toyota and Nissan and a number of other companies in that space. And then at some point, I wanted to get out of the advertising side of it and try something new. And a friend in the tech space reached out, and he said, Adam Carolla is putting together a podcast, an automotive podcast. Do you want to be involved? And I said, sure. That was about 15, almost 16 years ago. We launched CarCast, and we've been doing it for a long time. Adam actually is, for a few months now, hasn't really been a part of the show anymore, just because he's got a new podcast agreement and he's scaled back on a bunch of things. But we still do all the automotive stuff together. But yeah, so been doing podcasting in the automotive space for almost 16 years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, and I noticed the term the Motorator.
Yeah.
So you are the Motorator. So what's the story behind that? How did you become the Motorator?
So I was working on a website project for automotive enthusiasts, it was a long time ago, 17, maybe 20 years ago. And it was kind of a community for automotive enthusiasts. And I called it Motorator. And then a couple years into it, when I started working with Carolla, him being such a radio guy, so many people in the radio have different nicknames, right? And we were just talking about stuff that I was working on, and he thought that was kind of a fun name. And so he coined it as the on-air nickname. And since then, I've just kept the name, the Motorator name alive, because I had it on my social media accounts and stuff. I had the domain name, had the social media accounts, and I don't know, it's just kind of in the world of online media, it's like to have any word that is kind of your own and it's one word and you can own it across the platforms, right? You can get it on all the social media accounts and stuff, which I did at the time. So I just thought it was a fun way to stick with it.
It's a great brand. I love it.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Very on brand. Yeah, easily recognizable. One word. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've been hosting this podcast for a while, and
yeah,
I don't know, like, were podcasts as hot back then when you got started? I feel like maybe you were earlier on that curve.
Yeah, it was pretty early on. Like, podcasts were happening for sure, but there were, I want to say when we started, so Adam started the Adam Carolla show maybe about 6 months even before we did. So if you guys don't know who Adam Carolla is, he's a longtime radio guy, a TV writer. He did The Man Show with Jimmy Kimmel, and he did Loveline for a long time as a radio show, as a MTV show. And then about 16 years ago or so, he was moving off of the radio and started getting into podcasting. So I wouldn't say he was the first podcaster, but probably one of the first celebrities or somebody with a following to have a podcast. I want to say there was a few thousand podcasts when we started. Now there's millions of podcasts. I remember starting and even talking to Apple about their app, about their podcasts, and they're like, yeah, we've grown to 50,000 podcasts. This is amazing. And now they're, I don't know, 5.5 million podcasts. Yeah, but Adam was is a big car guy as well. He's got an incredible collection of cars. And when we started getting into the podcasting space, we saw it as an opportunity to of course, sit down and have conversations with people that some people that we knew that we just never got a chance to really talk cars, especially on the air, and plenty of people that we didn't know, or people that I knew of and never had a chance to meet. A lot from the automotive aftermarket and racing and different aspects of that industry that I thought was fun. So here we are, well over 1,000 shows, and 15 years later, still at it, still having fun, still meeting people.
Yeah, I love it. So in all this time co-hosting and producing the show, what are some things that, like, when you look back at all these years of putting out so much content and producing these shows and meeting the people, do you have any maybe favorite moments or guests that you look back on fondly on? Like, what are some highlights that really stand out to you in your hosting career so far?
Yeah, so it's been a long time. So to think back at all of those shows, I remember. So we've done quite a few live shows. So we do the podcast live in front of an audience, and I remember I think we're at a car museum in Portland, some kind of big facility, and I'm pretty sure it was in Portland. And our guest was Mario Andretti, and to be able to do that as a live show and have him come on, of course, but before the show, just kind of hanging out in the green room and chatting for a bit, and then coming out and starting the show, and then bringing Mario Andretti on. And I knew from a TV show that I did. So I did a documentary TV show on the History Channel. I believe it's a History Channel. They interviewed me and they interviewed a bunch of other people, but they interviewed Mario Andretti before they interviewed me. And I got to see some of that footage before we sat down. Right. And so I knew he is really against EVs. He's really against electric vehicles. So when we were doing the live show in Portland, we had this great conversation about the history and racing and his relationship with Paul Newman, that Adam's a big collector of Paul Newman cars. I just wanted to get his reaction in front of an audience and poke the bear a little bit and just like, I go, all right, Mario, here we are. Let's talk about electric vehicles. Let's talk about, which electric vehicles do you have? And he was just like, oh, you're killing me here. He was just rolling his eyes. He's like, we're not doing that. And it got a good laugh. His reaction was priceless. He's just not down with it. Certainly not down with it, but. Yeah, he was a fantastic guest. And another one that I remember, someone I got to meet and do some events with several times, but with Keanu Reeves. And Keanu Reeves is it's no secret he's a big motorcycle guy, but he's a hell of a driver, on a motorcycle, on a car, and all of the stuff he's done over the years. He tries to do so much of his own driving these films. I want to say the most recent, like John Wick, whichever one it was, where like he was driving and the door is like off the car and he brings his hand down and scoops the gun up off the street and do it. Like he did that for real. And I believe he worked with Tanner Faust, as his stunt driver. And Tanner's like, let me see if I can do it. And he just kept doing it to see if he can get it done. And then because sometimes the director's like, we don't want a stunt person because we can't shoot it up close. You have to see his face. He goes, so your job, Tanner, is to teach Keanu Reeves how to do it, and taught him how to do it. And have you seen the film? It came out great, right? It's a fantastic scene. But I remember going to Goodwood, the event in the UK, Chichester, and having a great conversation with Keanu. We had Adam had a car, and then it was in the pit. It was just right next to Keanu's motorcycles, and he was doing the hill climb on his Arch motorcycles. And we just took a break. We got some lunch, and one of our film crews on our documentary side was there, and we were doing I think Adam and I were doing a TV show at the time, and we said, Keanu, do you want to come in and, be on it? He's like, sure, get set up. We'll finish lunch. Let me know when you go. And then he's such a good dude, and he has so much experience in this. You kind of forget because you see him on camera and he's this great star, this great action star, sweetest guy. And then we go over and we're like, our guy is ready. He's got this camera, he's got his lights. So Keanu walks over and he's like, hey, I'm Keanu, nice to meet you, meets the rest of the crew. And he's like, and I go, well, we're just going to stand here. It'll be, you and then me and then Adam and another guy. And he goes, okay, so we're going to stand right here. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, no problem. And he goes to our director and he goes, do you mind if I just take a look? Can I make an adjustment? We're like, dude, do whatever you want. It's fine with me. He looks at the camera. He moves the camera, adjusts the lights, gets back. The whole thing takes 11 seconds, right? He just gets it done. And then our guy looks through the camera and he's like, yeah, this is much better. It's much better. He just nails it. And then we just nailed everything on basically like one take because it's pretty much just an interview anyway. And then, then we just went back down, got back into the cars and the motorcycles and did the hill climb. But such a good dude, such a professional. And being able to see him just even do that, just walk in and go, let me just fix this real quick. Didn't make a fuss about it. It's just like, do you mind if I just take a peek? And he's like, done. The Keanu touch. I wish we had that in everything that we filmed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that definitely sounds like that should maybe go into the greatest hits, the CarCast greatest hits compilation.
Yeah, well, we were filming a TV show, so it's there somewhere. There's the interviews out there somewhere.
Yeah, it's a good experience. It's awesome to hear. I mean, I'm looking at. I mean, that's not. You've been involved in a bunch of projects, right? Like winning the Racing Life of Paul Newman, the 24-Hour War, Shelby American, which actually was one of our early customers as well. Uppity, the Willie T. Rip story. So you've been involved in a lot of automotive storytelling, right? Like how do these things come about? Like how do you get drawn into this automotive storytelling and particular stories? Like what stands out to you in each one of these and how does it come together?
Yeah. So all of those documentaries are produced by a production company called Chassis Media that Adam Carolla owns with a wonderful guy named Nate Adams, who produced and directed, I think, almost all of those films, some with Adam. So I'm not too involved in that. That's really those guys doing it. The first documentary, though, was the Paul Newman film, which I was a little bit involved in. And that really just came from Adam and I knowing the Paul Newman story, Adam collecting a bunch of Paul Newman's racing cars. And as we started to curate those cars into Adam's collection, learning more and more about those stories and hearing about Paul Newman's career, a career that he started in racing when he was, I think, 41 or 42 years old. So he kind of started it a little bit later in life. Well, midway, I guess, for him, because he raced until he wasn't around anymore into his 80s. So that was the first documentary that got produced out of there. And then from there, Adam and Nate really started going full steam ahead on the production company. The 24-Hour War was such a great film. It's Ford versus Ferrari at Le Mans. Much like the feature film Ford v Ferrari, having the documentary version of that, which we did before the feature film. And then when they were doing that film, there was such a significant Shelby component to it. We needed to figure out how much of the Shelby story should be in that film or should be a separate film. So I forgot how much. Maybe it's like 11 or 12 minutes or 15 minutes of the Shelby story in the 24-Hour War. And then we did another film, Shelby American, which is really more about Carroll Shelby, working with the Shelby family. So that turned out great. And in the Paul Newman film, the first film we did, that's where we met Willie T. Ribbs. And Willie T. Ribbs was a young guy, an up-and-coming driver, and he had met Paul Newman and started doing some driving, and Newman's the one that called and said, I got you a ride, expect a call. You're going to get a call like tomorrow from, I don't remember, Budweiser and Ford or something like that. And he got the call, and it's really kind of started his professional racing career. So when Nate went to Texas, I believe, to interview Willie, and I don't know, he was showing it to Adam or doing something with Adam on the clips. And then I remember talking to Adam, he's like, you got to see this stuff with Willie T. Ribbs. He's fantastic. He's so charismatic. He's such a trip that he's got to be our next documentary. And they started working on that film. And Willie's a great guy. He's around. He's busier more than ever. I think he's on the payroll with F1 and CBS and doing some commentary and all kinds of stuff. So he's having a great time. And that is such a great film. He was the first black driver to qualify for the Indy 500. And hearing his story and how controversial it was, and just sort of the things he had to overcome to get there. And he does it with so much flair, right? He was not a subtle person, by any means. So it's a great film. It was so much fun to work with him.
Thanks for sharing those stories. I'm really enjoying listening to them. I'm going to make sure we tag all those pieces in the description when this comes out. So I want to take a break from Matt the car guy.
Okay.
And maybe just spend a couple of minutes on Matt the entrepreneur.
Okay.
So Bravago, so you own a hard seltzer company. I checked out the website. I don't know if they distribute it in Kansas City, but I'm going to try to find it. But tell us a little bit about the story of Bravago.
Yeah, so it's pretty new. It's actually kind of a COVID project of mine. I had helped a friend start an alcohol company years ago, and it kind of gave me the bug. Like I was interested in doing it and wanted to try to give it a shot. And I kind of looked at what was out there. And during COVID, we were just everyone was kind of locked at home and didn't want to end up drinking too much beer and sit home and get fat. So I was drinking a few hard seltzers and I was like, my God, these things are terrible. And I was more determined to make something that was better than I was to stop drinking them, right? I was like, these are terrible. I'm never drinking them again. I was like, but I don't think they need to be. So Started working on some formulas and came up with something that I thought was much better than what's out there, and that's where Bravago came from. And then just working with my friends in the automotive space that have been out there for so long, I had reached out to a few and said, "Listen, I'm putting together this company. It's gonna it's gonna require some capital and it's gonna take some time because stores, restaurants, everything's kind of locked down. So I don't know how much traction we're going to get. Are you willing to help?" And I was very fortunate to have some people come in and say yes. Bill Goldberg, who I do a podcast with, he's a WWE wrestler, former NFL player. He's a partner on it, and probably we'll be using him more in the forward-facing, marketing side of things. But we have a great product. It's not like the others that are out there. We're in stores in Southern California right now, mostly in Total Wine and More stores, but we do sell it online and we can ship to 43 states. So if you're outside of California, that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Done.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm not going to ask you what seltzer was that sucked. So I don't want to infuriate any of your competitors unless you want to volunteer that information.
Yeah. Oh, they're all terrible. White Claw's terrible.
They're all terrible. Okay.
I'll just tell you, I think they're terrible. And the biggest reason why is a lot of the brands out there, they use stevia as the sweetener. And when you put stevia into something like a drink that has very minimal ingredients, you get this weird aftertaste, this weird like metallic aftertaste, and it's kind of dry on the end as well. So it still kind of leaves you thirsty. It's not very refreshing. So that was one of the flaws. And then the other one is I found is a lot of carbonation. And I think people are kind of steering away from that. So the three things we focused on was having a much bolder flavor. So we definitely kicked up the flavors. We did a lighter carbonation, so it's easier to drink. You won't feel bloated. And we don't use any stevia. We actually formulate with monk fruit, which is an all-natural fruit, 0-calorie sweetener, and it works really well in this type of drink. It makes the flavors pop, and there's no weird aftertaste. So it's not rocket science, but I think we were able to come up with a formula that worked. So we do a ton of tasting events, and people that try it seem to really like it.
So it's seltzer basically water, alcohol, flavoring, carbonation.
Yes, and so we have carbonated water. It's purified carbonated water. It's our alcohol base, which is like a clear, flavorless liquid. Just some natural flavors, a little bit of monk fruit. There's 2 grams of pure cane sugar and citric acid, which is a little bit of citrus. But that's it. There's not a lot. It doesn't need stuff in it. We don't have any artificial colors or flavors. We have a cherry flavor, but it's still clear. I don't need to make it red just because it's cherry. Like this isn't a Rockstar or a Monster. Like I don't need to add all that stuff to it. We just made it as clean as possible. And they're 5.1% alcohol. And they're great mixers, by the way. We have a strawberry lemon. You want to spike it with a little vodka, a little gin? Have at it.
I love it. Congrats. I love hearing the stories that start with, I tried it. It wasn't good. There wasn't anything better out there. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and do something about it. A lot of cool stuff and products and companies come out of that. So I love that you're doing that.
Thank you. I love that as well. I thrive on those stories, having done a lot of consulting and built businesses in the past, and I still teach, I guess you could say, a number of college kids on their businesses. I work with a couple of college kids that they have an app. This is actually worth looking at. They have an app called Paper Trail. It's for the automotive space. Paper Trail is the step beyond Carfax, right? Paper Trail is an app where you can upload your car and you can upload all of your documentation. If you have a collector car or anything like that, all of the modifications and stuff that you've done, you can share that with people. If you want to sell your car, you can transfer all of that stuff over there. So it's a great way to sort of keep tabs and document all of your cars and your builds. And build a community within the app as well. It's good. It's fun. It's called Paper Trail.
Okay. So as an owner of the vehicle, I can continuously upload all the records and any relevant documents, sort of creating this historical profile of a vehicle, especially maybe for collectibles.
Yes, and you can grab that data and you can transfer that data, which makes it easy, right? If we go to like bring a trailer and we post a car that we think is cool, and then they ask you for photos of all of the receipts and stuff, well, every time you have to like go on your phone or grab the photos. Imagine being able to put all that stuff in an app, photos of your vehicle, track all the modifications, all of your receipts, service records, anything you want, you can put and upload in the app and share it. And then there's a fun community you can get in on. Yeah, they're a bunch of young guys that just finished school. I think originally out of St. Louis, and they're putting together something fun. So it's new, so they're open to ideas. If you get on the app and you have some feedback or you're looking for features, reach out to them. They'll get it.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. So I want to pick your brain a little bit more about more automotive stuff,
Okay.
current state of things, and maybe stuff, at least your view on the future. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, but we can make educated guesses on where things are going. So I, as I was telling you earlier, I'm not as big of a car guy as some of my friends in this industry and some of my colleagues at work, but they're passionate about the space. So I enlisted the help of my good friend Sky Hallman, who also is an entrepreneur, a longtime dealer turned entrepreneur.
Okay.
He started a company called One Auction View that makes it easy for dealers to buy cars from multiple sources in one place. So we partner with him and we power his transportation infrastructure. And I was talking to him about you coming on the show, and there's some things, questions that he gave me that I'm excited to ask you about.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
I thought would be good. I mean, EV is huge. I think the first thing that we were wondering about, like your view on EVs and the balance between, internal combustion engines versus EVs and how that evolves over the next decade, especially if you could maybe comment on what how you think, in the space of, automotive enthusiasts and specialty cars. Like, will there always be a place for the ICE enthusiast and internal combustion engine? And what do you see happening with that in the next 10 years?
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of have to take the politics out of it because that's a different discussion, right? The politics side of it is different than the vehicles themselves. So that being said, I have I have a handful of cars. I have one EV. I have a Ford Lightning electric truck, but I also have a 95 Ford Lightning. I have the gas engine truck. So I really just have it because it was fun to have both. And because I do a podcast, a few times a week, I thought I should be able to be in a position to talk about what it's like to own an EV and to live with an EV, especially in a place like California where it's oftentimes very complicated to charge it. So, that being said, I have gas engine cars as well. I have a 2021 Mustang Mach-1 we built for the SEMA show. It's got twin turbos on it. I've got a 93 Cobra. I've got, my 95 Ford Lightning. They're all modified. They're all ridiculous and they're all fun to drive. But I think there's a place for EV, but I like it as an option. And there are some things I think are great. First of all, the performance of most of these vehicles is fantastic. In a place like LA where, gas is $5 a gallon, and the amount of time it takes, like having to not go to the gas station is a benefit. Now, I don't necessarily like the way the whole thing was rolled out and it was kind of forced upon people instead of as an option. So that kind of put a bad taste in everyone's mouth. I also don't know necessarily without digging into it more. I'm not an expert. I don't feel like it's a cleaner solution, but I just think it's a different option. Now, as far as driving some of the EVs that I've driven, and I've driven quite a few, I've had fun with them. Some are great, some are terrible, but that's the same with gas engine cars as well. What's the future of miles per gallon and all that? Maybe it's not pure EVs, maybe it's more hybrid. There's going to be different versions of it. Are we going to get rid of gas engine vehicles? I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think if you wanted a cleaner solution, we'd probably be talking more about hydrogen. fuel cell cars than we are about pure EVs. If we maybe, possibly, if we're talking about the future of gasoline, it is a limited resource, like so many things, that it's not going to be around forever. I don't know what the time frame is on that. Companies like Porsche and I think Mazda that are working on e-fuels, and it takes an incredible amount of power, solar power, to create this e-fuel. But you're talking about largely a synthetic fuel that's a higher octane and clean burning that Porsche and some of the others are using in racing right now, and it's highly effective. If we can get that to a reasonable cost and decent manufacturing, I think that's a solution. Again, there isn't one solution. It's, will we be presented with options? Things like, hey, we've got gas engine, and then we've got E85, and then we've got EVs, and we've got hybrids and plug-in hybrids and non-plug-in hybrids, and we've got some hydrogen cars, and having those options are what I think is exciting as an automotive enthusiast. Getting forced into something is less exciting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Feels very American to have it as a choice, as an option.
Yeah.
I love the hybrid approach as well. I think having choice and options and a hybrid, and there's a part of me that feels like EV is a stepping stone to something greater. I mean, hydrogen fuels have a lot of promise down the road if we can figure that out. But yeah, I love that. Yeah, having it as an option, and then a hybrid, not having it be forced down. But that also kind of seems like a very California problem. Maybe the rest of the country doesn't have to deal with as much.
Yeah. So we've got our fair share of issues out here, that's for sure.
So staying on the topic of EVs, okay. You mentioned some muscle cars. So Scott was telling me that Dodge and Chevy are introducing high performance EVs. So we're wondering what your thoughts were on the future of muscle cars and if they can retain their heritage in this electrified world.
Yeah, I think it's too early to say. Ford made the decision of sticking with gas engines in their Ford Mustang when other companies were committing to EV. So Dodge ended their Dodge Challenger, and they have the Dodge Charger Daytona, which is an all-electric vehicle. I haven't driven it yet. I think it'll be exciting to drive. I think the power will be there. I think it'll have a lot of the performance attributes. But for now, I think they're for sure going to lose some of their fan base. But when they announced that car, soon after, they announced versions of it with a gas engine as well. So now they're going back and saying, we're going to do an EV and we're going to have the 6-cylinder Hurricane engine available. Of course, it's not the V8, but it can have 500 horsepower. 540 horsepower in a 6-cylinder version, which is interesting. And now they've not backtracked a little bit, but they've sort of revised their messaging to say, we haven't ruled out the fact that this new platform, this new car, can't have a V8 engine. It possibly could. We don't have a plan for that yet, but it is something we're taking a look at. So I think they realized in Dodge's case, they're probably going to lose some of their audience and they're going to have to find a way to win them back. But some of it's going to be sales driven. Look at Porsche. Porsche was going to commit to 80% electric vehicles by like 2030. And now they're backtracking on that. The Porsche Taycan, or I'm sorry, the Porsche Macan, the small SUV, that's just been released as an EV. And now they want to continue selling that alongside a gas engine version of the Macan. I'm not sure if the Porsche Taycan will have a gas engine, but last I heard, Porsche engineers are looking at the possibility of having some sort of gas engine in that car. Tough to say if they mean no EV at all, or some sort of hybrid platform, or something with an onboard generator, right? Which is another category we can look at, right? Like the Ram Charger is a full-size Ram pickup truck that is an electric vehicle with a 6-cylinder, 3.5 liter V6, but the 6-cylinder engine doesn't power the wheels. It's an onboard generator to charge the batteries. You can drive around as a plug-in electric vehicle. And then if you're going on a longer trip, or if you're going to tow heavier weight, that gas engine will kick in and charge the batteries. So, but all of the movement of that vehicle, all of its power of the vehicle is done with electric motors. This isn't a hybrid where it can go between gas engine and power the wheels between the gas engine and electric motors, right? You have both. This is just electric motors. This is a different, it's not particularly new, but it's an interesting way, because you don't have to say, oh, I've got a Ford F-150, the hybrid truck, right? That has a gas engine, it has batteries, it has electric motors, has gas engine motors. And if you're going to tow, or you're going to get onto an on-ramp, it wants to kick in that gas engine and the electric motors and batteries and give you the most amount of power. The Ram charger just uses electric motors. And if it needs extra power for the batteries, right, the gas engine can provide it. But the performance of that truck doesn't really change, because it's still, the gas engine is empowering the wheels, you know? So yeah, again, another option. You can buy a gas engine Ram truck. You can buy a diesel truck. You're going to be able to buy an all electric truck, or you can buy the Ram charger, which is electric with an onboard generator, a range extender, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the variety of options.
Yeah.
And I like that we're innovating a ton in a short amount of time. So speaking of newer cars, what are your thoughts on the modern cars as future collectibles? How do you see that space?
Yeah, listen, we're definitely going to have that. There's, you know, the car companies are seeing it now, I think, more than ever. You know, something they might have overlooked even 20 years ago, let alone 50 years ago, especially the high end, you know, sports car companies, supercar companies doing special edition versions of their cars. You get an Aston Martin, you know, DB9, or now a DB11, DB12, you get those cars and you look at the special edition versions of those cars. The special edition limited run cars are the ones that seem to hold the most value. And they oftentimes go to collectors and don't get driven much and end up at auction down the road. There's a business side of it. On the collection side, there's a business for it. Does a Ford Mustang Mach 1 or a Shelby GT500 become a collectible down the line? Yeah, sure. They're making a few thousand of them, not a few hundred of them, but sure, they will hold their value better than the regular Mustang will. You know, any of the Porsche GT cars, GT3s, GT4s, GTRS, you know, like those cars will all hold their value more than the regular Porsche 911. Not that there's anything wrong with a Carrera or Carrera S, but you know, where I would caution you initially, just for now, until we work things out more, are the expensive supercars that are hybrid. I still feel like those car companies like a McLaren P1 and a Ferrari, like a LaFerrari and some of the others, those cars, you collect them, you don't drive them much, and they were not meant to sit in a garage. The hybrid systems, the batteries, they're expensive. They're really, you know, you're talking $250,000 for a battery, probably in a LaFerrari. And until they come up with a way to fix it or work with aftermarket companies on making those batteries accessible, I wouldn't run out and say, hey, I'm going to get a LaFerrari and I'm going to keep it. I'm going to hand it down to my kids, and it's going to be a big investment opportunity for them. I'm not saying it won't be. Of course, it'll be worth money. But I would probably invest in the non-hybrid versions of those. They just need more time. They need more time to figure out what they're going to do. You know, Porsche's already looking at it. You know, Porsche's starting to look at, you know, on their hybrid supercar, like, what are they going to do 30 years from now? How are they going to make that car collectible? And it's going to come up with some sort of aftermarket battery or some program or something you can get from Porsche to keep that car as valuable as possible. That's the biggest flaw, is people don't want the battery to die, and then what?
So maybe give it some time before we start thinking about these new brand of cars as investments.
Well, modern cars, yes, but the hybrid supercars, I would give it a little bit more time. I mean, if you want to buy it and drive it and have fun with it, that great. But if you're talking about buying it as an investment and holding on to it for 10 or 15 years, I think there's other stuff out there that you can get.
Yeah. My friend, one of my friends races horses. And he was telling me about the horse racing business and how it's a sure way to lose money. Like you wouldn't be in that business unless you're super passionate about it.
Yeah.
Unless you love racing, unless you love horses, you wouldn't really be in that business to make money. Sometimes, looking at collectibles and seeing it as an investment also seems like there's some similarities there.
There is, but the car collection world is a big business, and a website like Bring a Trailer, I think, did like $1.2 billion in total sales last year, maybe 1.4. Like, it's a monster. Like, yeah, the big auctions, Barrett Jackson, RM Sotheby's, Broad Arrow, they all did fantastic this past year in 2024.
Thanks, Matt. I'd like to close out with some rapid fire questions. Okay. I have a suggestion here to automatize the label of that, so we'll try that. We can either call it full throttle Q&A or lightning lap questions.
Okay.
What do you think?
I don't know. Let's see. Let's do the lightning lap. I don't know. McLaren 720S.
Very nice. Dream road trip car and destination.
Road trip car. That's a tough one because you want something kind of luxury. Listen, I'll tell you that Adam Carolla and I did a road trip in a Rolls-Royce Ghost, and that was the nicest road trip car because you kind of want like the nicest ride possible. But as far as destination, I think it would be exciting to maybe hit a part of Europe. I think Italy, Spain, Portugal. I think that's probably going to be the next destination.
Yeah. Great choice, Matt. Now, a vehicle you regret selling.
I try not to regret them, but I'll tell you that I have my 2021 Mustang Mach 1 right now. It's a twin turbo car, a bunch of carbon fiber, and it's going to go up for sale pretty soon. And I know I'm going to regret selling it, but it's just the next move that I think I got to do. So it's a little foreshadowing. I know that one's going to hurt.
Yeah, I feel you on that. All right, this one should be hopefully simple or not. Manual or automatic? What's your preference and why?
Manual. It's just more fun. I drove a manual for 40 years of my life, so before I got the first automatic.
All right, last question is one car from the history of cars that you wish you could own.
Well, like if you look at the money, you want something like a Ferrari like 250. But one that's been on my list for a while that in the world of collector cars isn't completely unattainable. It's $500,000, but I like the Jaguar XJ220. It's an underrated supercar with a 6-cylinder engine, but it looks amazing. And I think they're trading for about $500,000. Not that I can afford anything close to that, but yeah.
Not yet. Yeah, Bravago.
Yeah, I got to sell some more hard seltzers. Come on, order some online.
Yeah, that's a lot of hard seltzers. Yeah. That's right. Well, Matt, thanks, man. This was really fun. Super informative, very entertaining. I love the stories. Big fan of the work that you're doing. Yeah. Thanks for being on the show. I'd love for you to close out by letting the audience know where we can continue following your work online.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like us to know?
I appreciate that. You can follow me at Motorator. It's just Motor and ATOR. I'm on all the social media platforms at Motorator. And from there, you can get to the podcast and all the other stuff that we're doing. And Bravago is Drink Bravago. It's BRAVAGO. That's the website. It's the social media handle. So you can follow us there. And we're just sign up for the newsletter, order product, whatever you like. Give us a follow.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure to link those in the description. With that, thanks, Matt. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. Yeah, and signing off from Super Dispatch. Thank you.